How's it going, everyone? Welcome to Let's Talk Breaking the Stigma, the podcast where we dive into all things mental health and with the goal of breaking the stigma around it and getting people to talk about it and letting you know that you are not alone in this fight. I'm joined by my co host, Calvin. Today, we're
On
going to be
everybody.
talking about anxiety, how it affects us, how it plays a part in depression as well as other mental illnesses. Um, and that's it. We're going to talk about it. So, Calvin, how you been?
Been hanging in there, man. In my fifth week of this class for English composition. It's been a little bit stressful, um, but I'm pushing through it, kind of fighting the good fight. Um, just kind of hanging on in there, ready to get it done, ready to take a break for the summer.
You're,
Um,
you're in the home stretch
Other
now,
than
right?
that, yeah, I'm on the back end of it, so just kind of buckling down and getting through the roughest part of it. So I'm ready for it to be over though.
Yeah. I can't imagine juggling that with work and life and everything else. So that's awesome, man.
Yeah, man. It's been stressful to say the least. I've been taking my medication again because it's just I noticed my mental health was kind of slipping again with between work and home life and school on top of it. I was just like, man, this starting to get to be a lot. So I
Right.
mean, it's just something I needed to do to kind of help keep me going. So
Absolutely. So
what's been
that's
going on with you?
honestly, man, not a whole lot. Work's keeping me busy. We're gearing up on the wedding planning and getting some details finalized there and getting excited. So yeah, not a whole lot going on right now, but it's enough to where it's very time consuming and yeah. So
No doubt it. Wedding planning can be pretty stressful.
luckily, we're both in agreement. We're doing a very just small, intimate ceremony kind of thing, so we don't have to worry about a guest list of 200-300 people or anything like that. So I
Oh
think
yeah,
that's
seating arrangements and stuff like that.
right. Yeah, it's like, well, we can't sit this person with this person because they don't get along, or it's like, so it's gonna be just very, very small and intimate, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So,
That's a good thing,
but
man. I'm so happy for you, man. I'm so excited for you.
but yeah, outside of that, just plugging away at work and same old grind. Got one more week of day shift and back to the night shift life.
Yeah, how are you managing with the change in schedules between going to day shift and night shift?
It's getting easier. It was definitely an adjustment last year, going from being nights for the 6 years I was at Toyota in Indiana, to now going to every 4 weeks, rotating back and forth. Um, Definitely had to learn how to manage my time and especially on the weekends kind of deal and trying to flip your schedule on a weekend to get ready for that shift change. So, but I'm learning to adjust and said learning how to manage it. So it's gotten a lot easier. That the first
That's
week of
good.
day shift is usually the hardest. I said going from days to nights isn't near as hard because just get all the sleep on the weekend and just rest up. But going from nights to days where I get off on Saturday morning and then have to be right back in at work on Monday morning is
Yeah, I
tough.
bet
But
that's tough.
normally I try to
There was a
just
week where I had to do a day shift. I had to do a this cross check thing we do where I got told on a Thursday that I was going to day shift for a week. And it was so difficult to flip my schedule around to get ready for day shift. And then about the time I got used to the day shift schedule, it was time to go back to night shift. So I can only imagine trying to do it every couple weeks.
yeah. And honestly, like so, ours isn't that bad. The engine plant here in Huntsville, they rotate every 2 weeks. or they did up
Okay.
until recently. I think they just recently went to a static shift, but yeah, up until now they were rotating every 2 weeks. Now that would be rough.
That sounds rough.
I don't know how I'd manage that. So give me one second.
I don't think I could. I don't think I would want to do something like that. But more props to you, man. That's just better you than me. I don't think I could do it.
It's not as bad as it sounds, especially I think 4 weeks is a good amount of time. So like I said, 2 weeks would be rough, but I think 4 weeks is just right. It's where, and it's honestly kind of nice because in Indiana being like just on nights full time, yeah, it was easier to manage like my sleep and that kind of stuff because I was on the same shift. But as well, like I as well as I do, when you're on nights, it gets hard to have any kind of social life, right?
Very
So
much so.
you're up at odd hours of the day, sleeping at when people are normally up, and then on the weekends, same thing. Like you either have to force yourself to stay up all day Saturday to be able to hang out with people, or by the time you get up, people are already like winding down for the day, that kind of thing. Um, so it makes it especially hard to have any kind of social life or family life, that kind of thing. So going from that to now having half my time on days does make that a lot nicer to where we can Tara and I can plan things around when I'm on day shift as opposed to when I'm on nights. So, but
So speaking of your work down there in Alabama,
sorry.
and our topic of anxiety this week, how did you manage the anxiety of packing up from leaving everything you knew here to transitioning to a new place, a new job with just you and your fiance? Like, how did you manage all of that to still be able to do your job and live your life?
The short answer is I didn't. But no, it was a struggle. And I take a second to apologize for my dog running across the screen. But um,
We love the animals here.
but no, it was a challenge. It's still something that I get anxious about, and have some moments, trying to navigate things. But uh, it was tough. Like I said, this was the furthest I've ever moved away from home. So packing up my entire life and coming down here on, yeah, I had a guaranteed job, and so I knew that was, but not knowing how that job was going to go, how sure everything was, it kind of deal, like didn't know if I was going to come down to this plant and then 6 months later they were going to shut down. Like you have no idea
Yeah.
what you're getting into. And I mean, we did a little bit of research, um but yeah, just coming down here completely like not knowing anybody, not knowing the areas, um, trying to find an apartment or a place to live. It was it was a lot. There was a lot of sleepless nights, especially once we got down here, trying to figure out how to make things work and how to adjust to life down here on our own. Uh, there were definitely some mental health days. There were days where and I'll talk about this a little bit when we actually get into anxiety and how it affects us and whatnot. But there were days where I had to take mental health days from work where I called in. I was like, I I just can't go. I can't come in today. And those days were like I would literally be in bed and could not will myself out of bed. Like it was that bad. But um, luckily I had Tara down here with me the whole time because originally when I talked about coming down, we had tossed around some different ideas about when she was going to come down to join me down here, and we talked about I would come down in January. Maybe she would come down at the end of the school year so she could finish out her school year with her kids up in Sullivan. Um, and I was like, yeah, I mean, whatever works best for you. I'm going to be here. I said, you know, so we'll make that work. And then when I proposed in December of that year, um, she was like, I'm going to come down in January with you. Like, I'm ready to start our lives together. And like, yeah, I'm ready to come down. And so, uh, so thankfully she was here the whole time, because honestly, I don't know how I would have managed, 5 months down here literally by myself. It probably it probably wouldn't have worked. I probably would have wanted to pack my bags and come right back, honestly. But because like I said, it was a lot on my plate to deal with, and um, especially with everything that happened last year, because not only dealing with that, but at the same time being that far away from home and dealing with loss of family members and things like that, and not being able to be back home and support family or have that support to grieve and that kind of thing. So there was a lot that went on that I had to process and deal with down here, as opposed to being surrounded by loved ones and or being there for my loved ones up back home. So that added even more to the anxiety and worry, because I worry a lot about uh, my perception, like people, the way people see me and view me, that kind of thing. So
And truthfully, I think we all do to some extent. I mean, I'm more of the type of person where I say that I could really care less what people think about me, but in the end, at the end of the day, we're all human,
right,
and you you can only not care so much. I mean, if you're you're human, so you're gonna care on some base level what people think of you, and it's gonna get to you at some point.
right. Yeah, and it definitely got to me, quite a bit. And like I said, as far as like how people perceive me, I didn't want, my absence, during those times, I worried about people thinking, well, how much does, you know, family and friends really mean to him if he's not here, and like that kind of deal. And I know that they wouldn't think that way. That's just the way my brain processes it. So I worry about people's reactions to things that happen in my life, or things that my actions and things like that. So uh, it's a lot to process. But and like I said, as far as like my family and friends, all those people, the people in my life, I know that they don't actually think those things about me. I know that they don't you know harbor any kind of harsh feelings or anything like that. It's just when you have the anxiety and depression, that's what your brain tells you, and so
Yeah,
it's hard to break out of that sometimes. And I
it
think
can be
that's
difficult.
yeah, and that's only that's the biggest thing with anxiety. So uh, since we're talking about it, I do want to give just a quick definition here of anxiety, and then. Uh, I've had some people ask me what it's like, and I have a little statement I want to read, actually from a post I had on social media a few years ago to try to help explain it to people, to kind of give everybody a kind of a clear idea of what it's like to deal with it. So, anxiety is a mental condition characterized by excessive apprehensiveness about real or perceived threats, typically leading to avoidance behaviors and often to physical symptoms such as increased heart rate and muscle tension. So, with that said, like I said, it's like an increased state of worry and tension. So, I had a few friends a few years ago, back in I believe 2020, so right around during the pandemic. They asked me what it was like to deal with it. Uh, Not because I would take mental health days when my anxiety was out of control and I couldn't function, and they're like, is it really that bad? Like, is it really uh, with them not understanding what it's like or what it's like to deal with it. So I came up with this little uh, statement about it, and you can tell me if you agree or disagree. So I'm just going to read this word for word. So I was asked about it at work tonight and didn't really have an immediate answer, so I'll try to sum it up here. For those who are lucky enough to not have to deal with anxiety, here's a bit of what it's like for me. Imagine swimming with your friends and you play a game to see who can hold their breath the longest. You all go underwater and you watch as one by one your friends pop up out of the water to catch their breath. You hold on as long as you can until the very last second and then break the surface of the water and take a deep breath, and all's well that ends well. Now imagine that scenario and you see all your friends emerge out of the water. You go to resurface and breathe, but something is covering the water and you can't get out. You struggle and fight and break You struggle and fight to break through what's in your way, but the more you struggle, the less energy you have and more out of breath you become. Things become desperate and you see your friends beginning to reach for you, but you don't have time to grab their hands. You have to keep fighting to get out. But no matter what you do, it's no use. You're trapped and you can't get out. Now, imagine having a nightmare about your worst fear. We'll use falling from a large height or a building or the sky. You're in a skyscraper and you fall out the window, plummeting towards the ground. Right at the last second, when your heart rate is at its highest and panic takes hold, you jolt awake. I think we've all had that type of dream. But now, imagine that you're in that split second just before you hit the ground, but you don't wake up. You don't hit the ground either. You're stuck in that state of panic, waiting to wake up from that nightmare. Combine those scenarios with the feelings of having the weight of the world on your shoulders, literally weighing you down. And that is exactly what it feels like to have anxiety.
That is the perfect description of what it feels like, because there have been nights at work, uh, and we work together, so I don't know if you've ever noticed,
Hmm.
but there's been nights where I've had to tell a team leader, hey, I've got to go to the bathroom. And I've literally ran to the bathroom to have a panic attack
Yep.
because everything at that moment just feels so overwhelming. And I feel like I'm being suffocated. And the only thing I can do is go to the bathroom stall, work through the panic attack, and just let it have its moment and then try and get through the night. But that is the perfect description of what it feels like. You just constantly feel like you're suffocating and you feel like your heart is going to beat out of your chest.
Hmm.
And you have people not understanding that feeling and they're looking at you just like, oh, just breathe, just breathe. And I'm like, I can't breathe. Like,
Right.
I'm trying to. I would like nothing more than to breathe, but I
Right.
can't.
Right.
Like, I feel like my heart is going to explode.
And there's a lot of times too where that anxiety isn't always written on someone's face. Like it's not something that's going to always be visible and prevalent. Um, it's something that either you can learn to try to mask what is happening, or but it's not something where you can't always look at somebody and be like, oh yeah, they're suffering from anxiety or they're having it. Now, obviously, if you're having an anxiety attack, it's something that okay, you can very clearly notice something like that. But just living with anxiety or like walking around with that constant tension and worry and like you said, that heart rate, and it's not something that is easily picked up on. Um, but for me, I mean, there have been days where I've woken up in the morning, and like I said, I've had to call out of work for it. But there are days where I'll wake up and I'll try to get out of bed, and I literally can't move. It's literally like I'm paralyzed. And obviously, I know that I'm not. I know that I'm perfectly healthy and like my limbs and everything still function, but like my brain won't tell my legs and arms to move, and I'm just laying there, like just staring at the ceiling, like
It's one of those disorders where it's like you said, it's that invisible disorder where it doesn't always show symptoms outward presenting, where but like anything else we can tell people, hey, my foot hurts or my back hurts or
mhm,
my arm hurts, and no one questions it. But if you or I look at someone and says, hey, my brain hurts, they're gonna like, oh, just get over it. It
right,
can't be that bad. Like but they don't understand it's just as much pain as any other part of your body. And it can be crippling at times.
Hmm. And like I said, on top of that, like trying to go to sleep at night. I mean, there's just been so many, especially like this past week. I had several of them. I went nights where I couldn't sleep. I'd go to bed and I'd sit there and my mind would just start racing, and and when that starts happening, it seems to kind of snowball and spiral and just get bigger, and and you can't slow it down. Like unless you can stop it right away, like it continues to build. And so I'd come into the living room and lay on the couch and toss and turn a little bit. And there were a couple nights where I just you know I'd come back in here and I'd be up until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, knowing that I've got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get ready for work. I'd get 2.5 hours of sleep, get up and get showered and go to work and be exhausted. And they're like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, yeah, I'm not sleeping very well. And so trying to find ways to navigate that has been tough. But um, yeah, I don't know. It's like it's one of those things that it's hard to cope with, and I don't have the answers, but um, that's what we're here to
I
talk
mean,
about.
I wish I had the answers for it. I mean, like for me, it presents differently because, like, I generally don't have trouble falling asleep,
Hmm.
but once I'm asleep, I suffer from really bad nightmares and I lash out in my sleep. I mean,
Oh wow.
there's been numerous occasions where, like, I've cold cocked my girlfriend in my sleep thinking I'm fighting something because I'm having a really bad nightmare. And, like,
Oh wow.
she's woken me up and said, like, hey, you're okay, you're safe, you're fine. And I wake up and I'm drenched in a cold sweat, and it's because I went to sleep thinking about something, having anxiety and having a panic attack, and then it manifests once I fall asleep. Like and it's terrible to feel that way all the
It is for sure, um, and that's one of the things too. Like when people ask about it, it's hard to explain. It's like I mean, like you said earlier, that being uh, kind of invisible to the eye. So when you say, "Oh, I'm having anxiety attack," or "I'm suffering from anxiety," or people they will tell you, "Oh, just don't worry about it. Everything will be all right." It's like and obviously, like yeah, I know things are going to be all right, and it's like I know that, but my brain doesn't tell me that, and so for people to like just be happy or smile, and it's like it's not that easy. Like yeah, I could probably force myself to smile, but that's not going to change, the demons raging inside of you. You know what I mean? Um,
time.
Matter of fact, I mean, 9 times out
It's
of
like
10, people with depression and anxiety and stuff, they, typically are the happy-go-lucky, smiling and laughing, because they're trying to find ways to cope and using those coping mechanisms to either deal with it or mask it, so that they don't bring others down with them. Uh,
yeah.
so
And I think it's more so of masking because they don't want to be that drain on everyone else around them,
right.
and they don't want to feel like they're that burden. And I mean, you and I can attest to this as well. I mean, how many times have we just put on that mask
Hmm.
and kept a smile on our face and been laughing and joking around our friends because we don't
Yep.
want to bring them down. We don't want to dampen the mood. So
Yep.
we smile through it, we laugh through it, and then when we get alone, that's when we feel it all.
Yep.
I mean,
And
it's just how we.
you have those one or two people that are kind of like in the like obviously like you and I are in the know with each other, right? So like you have those knowing glances, like yeah, like I'm smiling, but I'm not okay, and yeah. So like there's people that you can confide in that are going to know that, but for the majority, it's just they never would know because you're smiling, you're laughing, I have this thing, going into work, and I tell these awful dad jokes, just to get people to crack a smile, and because
Dad
you know
jokes are the best.
because I would rather spread that than to go to work and drag everybody down. Like, oh, I had anxiety last night, couldn't sleep, and 'cause I don't want to again, like I said, I don't want to burden them. Um, but that's something that I want to try to break, and that's part of this whole thing too. Is making sure that people know that it's okay to talk about, but also in this the same that you want to make sure that it's in the right context, right setting. Obviously, I don't want to go into work and share those stories and drag everybody down. You know what I mean? But in the right setting, in the right media and environment, you know, sharing those stories and letting people know how it affects your daily life and that kind of thing. So, um, one thing I
Yeah,
wanted.
I ended up doing that to one of my team leaders inadvertently. We got to talking about something, and he was just kind of pushing a point, and he was just kind of pushing my buttons the wrong way. And I was just like, "Hey, man, that may work for other people, but I am a severely depressed and suicidal person. I am doing my best to just get through day to day." And he just stopped and looked at me. He was like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "Yeah." He was like, "Are you good? Do you need to talk to somebody?" I was like, "No, I take medication. I go to therapy. I manage it pretty well. I have a pretty good support system, but the way you're saying things, that doesn't necessarily work for me. So you should be a little mindful of how you approach people."
I actually, now that you say that, I had a similar instance towards the end of the summer last year with a coworker, and I know initially the gesture wasn't meant with any kind of ill will, or like they weren't trying to cause any kind of trauma or anything, but it was one of those where if you're bored, you do the whole finger gun thing and put it you want to shoot yourself out of boredom or whatever. People do that, or they do the kind of deal, right?
Yeah.
And so he would be bored at work and would drive around and he would do that. Um, just like, oh man, especially downtime with production, right? So if you have downtime, you're gonna have a long overtime day. So people are looking forward to it. It's just like, oh, here we go again, and that's where that gesture would come into play. And for a long time, I was able to just kind of just shake it off and just ignore it. But it kept happening, and so I finally brought it to my manager's attention. I was like, "Hey," I was like, "I know that this is my and sorry for the pun, but this is my trigger to deal with. Like this is something that I can't expect people to tiptoe around my triggers, but this is something that is happening that um, that they need to be aware of." And she asked me to name the person, and I went back and forth. I was like, this individual has been in some hot water before, and I don't want to out them because, like I said, I'm not trying to, cost anybody their job or career like that. I'm not that person. So I was like, let me think on it. So I talked to a couple people, and they're like, if it's really that big of a deal, you should probably give her the name. So I gave her the name, and she said she would take care of it. She talked to him, that kind of deal. Well, then when we would go back out to process, she goes and talks to that individual, like maybe 100 yards away from me. Like we're that close to rather than pulling this person aside, into an office or a break area thing. Now she comes out to process with this person, and this person's in process about 100 yards away from my probably not even 100 yards, probably about 200 feet or so. But um, so while she's talking to this individual, they're looking at me, and so I knew instantly that they knew that I had said something because yeah, I can kind of read the room and see what's going on. So it instantly created not necessarily a
Paying
hostile work
attention.
environment, but it created issues between this individual and myself. And so that particular gesture stopped, which I was thankful for. Uh, but then after the following week, I was walking out with another coworker, and this original coworker caught up to us. And at that point, I just tried to ignore and just tried to separate myself. Try to keep my distance because I didn't want to say something or um, again to further escalate things or make things any worse. So the two of them are talking and we're walking out, and we get out to the parking lot, and this individual starts singing these parody lyrics to a song. So, which I mean, we've all done in the past. We've all, got our favorite, songs or show tunes that we sing made up lyrics to. It is what it is. Uh, but these particular lyrics had to do with wanting to unalive themselves, and I snapped. Like I went off this individual. Like I was like, "You've got to be kidding me!" Like they just had a conversation about this last week, and here you are doing the same thing. And like
Well, because at that point now they're trying to be malicious.
right. uh and so again, so I snapped, and they're like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." Like, no, like if you were sorry it wouldn't have happened. Sorry for the gesture, okay, that I that I'm willing to accept because it was uh, an absent-minded gesture that that you didn't mean harm in. Okay. Once you found out it was an issue, it stopped. Cool. Um, but knowing that that was an issue for a particular person, and then finding out who that person was, and then coming back and having a second incident, that was intentional. That's not something that you can apologize for. That's not something that just immediately after it happens. Oh, I'm sorry. That doesn't cut it. Uh, so you know, having to deal with that, and so it's one of those things where it's hard to juggle that stuff with like your everyday life and coworkers and things because again, I know that they're the things that trigger me and that set me off. There are things that I have to deal with and I have to cope with, and like I said, I can't expect the world to to tiptoe around me, and I get that. But when it's stuff like that that happens intentionally, like it's just it sends you further into your shell. You know what I mean? Where we're trying
It
to
just it kind of makes you want to recluse back into yourself because, I
right,
mean, you see and it goes back into our title of breaking the stigma, where it's difficult to break that stigma when people are so flippant about the idea of mental health and they treat it so recklessly, and a lot of people unfortunately treat it like it's a joke and that it's
right,
something that people can just get over, and it's simply because they just don't understand it.
right. It's not something that you can just snap your fingers and be in a great mood or be okay. And it's
I mean, I wish it was that simple.
right.
It would
It'd be
make things a lot simpler.
yeah, it'd make things a lot smoother and it'd make life a lot happier for sure. But um, and that's the thing too. So like with kind of tying this back to anxiety. So when that happened, and with this individual, that I'm going into work every day, and again with that perception of like how people are viewing me, it's like, I just went through this big investigation with this person, and with HR and all this kind of stuff, and like dragging each other through the mud with it, and it's like now how are people going to view me? You know, where people are going to be afraid to like talk or joke around me because oh I might turn them into HR, and I hate that. I don't want people to have that view, and so like I said, it kind of sets my anxiety off, like just having that constant worry, like when you see people huddled up talking, and you automatically assume that the conversation's about you. You see
Yeah.
people talking, and you see eyes glance over, and it's like, oh, they're definitely talking about what happened. They're definitely talking about me or whatever, and it just sends your mind into a frenzy. And I think for me, then that also plays into the depression part of it where my anxiety and depression seem to seemingly feed off of each other. And when that happens, like you get sucked into this giant hole that it's you don't know if you're gonna be able to climb out of it because your anxiety keeps you from moving, and you know that to break yourself out of your depression, you need to move, you need to be up, you need to like you've got to force yourself to fight,
It's a
right?
vicious cycle. It's just it becomes a vicious circle where they just start to feed off of each other, and like so the more the more you feel depressed, the more anxious you get about getting up and doing stuff, and then you feel more depressed that you're not able to get up and do stuff, and
Right,
then that just makes you feel even more anxious, and it just builds and builds and builds and builds.
right. And I chuckle, but I mean, it's really not funny. But yeah, that's exactly how it is. Is the way that it like you said, it just repeats itself, and like they feed off of each other, and we say it's hard to break out of those. So, but let's see.
It's terrible. It feels that way, man. And like if think life would be so much smoother if we could just snap our fingers and just get over it. But I mean, for the people that live with it, the people that deal with it on a daily basis, we know that it's not that simple, right? We know that we got to have the coping strategies to deal with it. We know that we got to find different ways to manage, like so we got to find those seemingly simple tasks that can seem overwhelming to us. We have to find smaller ways to do those. Like for me, if I know that taking a shower today just seems like Mount Everest, maybe I can just get up and brush my teeth. Let's
Right,
start there. If I can just make it to the bathroom to brush my teeth, then cool. We're off to a good start. Let's
right.
see how we do with that. Maybe by the end of the day, I'll be able to take a shower. Let's not
Right.
think about taking a shower right now. Let's start with something small. Like
And that's
so.
that's one of the things that I have to do since we kind of talking about kind of coping mechanisms and things what we do to get through it. That's a big one for me is making like small checklists or making to do list kind of deal where like it's like you said, you know you have this bigger picture thing that needs to happen, needs to get done, and you worry over it and stress over it and you have the anxiety. It's like, okay, well, let's not focus on the big picture. Let's focus on drawing that first line. Let's focus on, you know, picking up the pencil, you know, that kind of thing. And so, especially like when it comes to like our daily lives, like, okay, yeah, that the house has to get cleaned, right? So we have to clean this entire house. We got family coming over, guests coming over. We've got to clean top to bottom, and like your anxiety sets hold, and like there's so much to do. Like, how are you going to get this done in a day or 2 days or what have you? And so I always, we sit down and make a checklist. Like, okay, today we're going to do. Today we're going to sweep the floor. That's it. Like, just sweep the floors, and that's don't worry about anything else. Just get that done. And then, okay, tomorrow we're going to do the dishes. So we're going to load the dishwasher. Cool. And so I have to force myself to like you said, break it into those smaller pieces and those smaller chunks. Um, the biggest problem with that is when it's something that you don't have a clear roadmap for. So it's easy to do for things in our daily lives that we deal with every day. Like, getting up and going to work. Coming home and cooking dinner, and cleaning the house, things like that we do on a daily basis. When it's something that you're stressing over or you have anxiety over that you don't have a clear roadmap for, a clear answer for, it's much harder to make that checklist to kind of start checking those boxes and working through. And those are the instances where I have yet to find a way to truly cope with. There I've been lucky enough to where I can typically just kind of weight myself through those those attacks when they happen, and just the thoughts do eventually quiet, and my brain does finally get some rest. But
Well,
then
the way that I've been
but they
getting
come right
better
back.
about it, the way that I've been getting better about it, and I say getting better because it's obviously still a work in progress and it
Right,
doesn't happen overnight. I've been trying to tell myself that, and some people will maybe see it as procrastination, but I necessarily don't. But I look at it as some things are beyond my control and I don't need to worry about them until I need to worry about them. Stressing about them and letting that anxiety build up for something that is beyond my control at the moment is not being beneficial to my mental health and my physical health. So I
right,
need to focus on what I can control and what I can fix and what I can focus on and do those tasks.
right.
And then the things that are out of my control, just let that be until I need to do something, until I can do something about it. Because if I'm unable to do anything about it, then stressing about it isn't going to fix the situation. That's still a work in progress. It sounds easier to do that.
Right.
In practice, it's not that easy to do it, but I've been getting better at it of knowing when to just let go of certain things and just try not to worry about it so much.
And I definitely have to keep that in mind and try that as far as like just trying to put it out of mind and focus on something different to where where it does, like you said, kind of pushes that thought aside and kind of to the back of your mind, and get something else in the forefront for you to focus on. That way, you're not focused on that problem that you can't solve right now, or that isn't something that needs to be immediately dealt with. So definitely something I'll have to keep in mind and try. And if you're watching this video, we'd love to know what your thoughts are, and how you cope, if you have the same type of anxiety, depression issues that we've got. How do you cope? How do you manage? That's what we're here to talk about. We're here to share our thoughts and stories, and grow and heal together. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on it, and how you guys deal with it. With that said, as far as getting thoughts from our viewers, and whether it be on YouTube or TikTok or Facebook. We want to start doing something a little bit different on each of our podcasts, where we are going to focus on a particular follower. We're going to do like a follower showcase, where we pick someone who has liked or shared a video or commented on our content, and just kind of put them in the spotlight for a moment, and celebrate them. And then also, if they have a particular comment on a video that we want to discuss, we'll do that, or we'll ask them, if they have any thoughts they want to share, or something they'd like us to dive into. So, with that said, this week's follower showcase or spotlight is effing Ray of Sunshine on TikTok. So she has been a supporter since the very early conception of the channel. I think we posted, 3 or 4 videos, and she was on there, liking and sharing and commenting. So she's definitely been a part of the TikTok community from the get go, and sharing and liking the content. So we very much appreciate her and her support. So reaching out to her, one thing that she wanted us to touch on, or wanted to see if we would talk about or discuss. So she recently went through a pretty traumatic breakup. The end of a relationship. There was a lot of trauma there with the way that things ended, and she wants to know our thoughts on how to recover and how to move on from something like that, and pick yourself back up after uh, a letdown such as that. So, and I know myself, I've got all kinds of stuff on this because like I've gone through the relationship trauma. So I've got quite a bit I could say, but I wanted to see if you had any thoughts on it.
Um, for me, the and this is gonna sound super cliche, but honestly, the 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 only way that you're gonna deal with a bad breakup and moving on from a traumatic breakup is time. Like it's gonna take time. And some people, you have your people that say the cliche lines of, oh, the best way to get over one relationship is to get under someone else. And that sounds all well and good. That sounds fine and dandy when you're making jokes and stuff, but that just fills you with more emptiness, doesn't it? And it just leaves you wanting more from that person that you loved and you had those deep, intense feelings for, and you just never truly feel satisfied with yourself after you go out and do stuff like that.
Right.
Um, so honestly, the only thing that truly helps is retreating away from all of that and taking a step back away from it and just learning to love yourself again and learning what you will and won't tolerate in a relationship, learning your healthy boundaries, what learning who you are as a person, and learning what makes you happy without a relationship, because you have to learn how to make yourself happy before someone else can truly make you happy. So and all of that just comes with time.
Right.
So my suggestion to her would be just take that step back, like not necessarily avoid people, but avoid relationships for a little bit. Take that step back, get in touch with yourself again, learn to love yourself again. I mean, go through the anger phase, go through the mad phase, get that all out of your system, and just learn to be happy with yourself before you focus on finding someone else to make you happy.
Right. And honestly, you took the words right out of my mouth. One of the first things I was gonna say is you have to learn to love yourself. So whether it's one breakup or it's two, like whatever relationship issues that you've had, you have to figure out how to love yourself before you can truly love someone else or have someone else love you. Because if you don't fully love yourself, you're never going to give all of you to someone else. There's always going to be a piece of you that you don't love, that you want to keep, hidden away from people, and you're never really going to truly grow and heal uh, while doing that. So you've got to find out, what it is that you're holding on to that you can't let go of, and figure out why you can't let go of it, and you have to work through that, and figure out how you can let go of those things, and stay true to yourself, and again, like you said, love yourself. And beyond that, I don't necessarily know about, and I'll agree with you in part about avoiding relationships, um, but I also am in the camp of when you meet the right person, you know, it's never on our time. Like that never
This is
happens.
true.
It never happens at a convenient time. Um, it's just when it happens, it happens. That could be years after a breakup. It could be months. It could be days. You know, you know, you don't want to completely isolate yourself to the idea. What you don't want to do is you don't want to go chasing that feeling. That's the biggest thing. Like when you get out of a relationship that you were so invested in, that you obviously wanted to continue, and you know, and saw yourself with this person forever or long term or what have you. So when those things come to an abrupt end, it's easy to want to go and chase that feeling. That euphoria of being someone, you know, being someone's entire world and that kind of thing. Um, and that's the other thing is you never want to make your life or their life completely revolved around your partner. Like I don't want to go and find somebody and say, okay, this person I'm with, my entire world is them. Because when those things do fail, then if your entire world is revolved around them, then you're back to square one and you're back to okay, now I have nothing. Whereas if you focus on thinking, hey, this is what I have in my life, they're going to add to that. They're going to be an important piece of my life, but they're not the entire puzzle, right? They complete things in a sense, but they are not the entirety. So if for
Yes.
some reason that were to fail or to end, you still have the large portion of this picture that is still intact, and you still have all these pieces of your life that are held together that aren't relying on that one person. I think so that's important as well, is to really again focus on yourself, focus on you, uh, do the things that make you happy, that make you proud. Whether it's focusing on a career, whether it's focusing on your hobbies, things like that. Um, Take care of you and love yourself, and the rest will take care of itself.
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I didn't want to sound like, I was saying like just completely avoid relationships altogether.
Sure.
I mean, I know that can seem like pretty just extreme, but I mean, it's like you said, don't go chasing that that feeling. I mean,
Right. Because that's the unhealthy part of it is when you were so happy in a relationship and it ended, and you immediately want to find that happiness again. You immediately want to find that euphoria and that joy. You know,
a lot of people
it
go run out and they try to find that next high.
yeah, and that is incredibly toxic behavior, and quite honestly, if you're doing that, you know, the person that you find that that next person you find isn't going to get a true sense of you. They're not getting who you really are. They're getting this person that's like you said, chasing the high. If all you want is to constantly be happy and constantly chasing that euphoric feeling, said you're never going to really open yourself up and let someone have you know all of you. And I think that's important to do is the person that you're with, they need to see you for who you are and understand who you are, and that includes all of your flaws and imperfections. So when you're constantly chasing and you're getting dressed to the nines and going out and putting on this quote unquote best version of yourself, um, to try to find that next high, you're not you're not necessarily being true to yourself in those instances.
Absolutely.
So,
Couldn't have said it better myself, man. You hit the nail right on the head.
but with that, I think that's just about going to do it. This was an incredibly long episode, so I apologize that we were a little long-winded today. Uh, but please, if you're watching this, if you enjoy the content, subscribe, give us a follow. We post all of our full length episodes on YouTube, and we have some shorts and reels and things that we'll post to Facebook and TikTok. So like, subscribe, follow, leave us comments. So let us know what you think about the content so far. If you have thoughts on the topic at hand, we'd love to hear those as well. We'd love to hear you guys' stories. So, we've got more and more people coming out of the woodwork and sharing their comments and stories with us, which is exactly what we were aiming for. So, it's an exciting time, and it's fun to see this thing kind of kicking off and getting rolling. So, we've got some good momentum.
You guys so much. Thank you all so much for your continued support.
All right, we'll see you guys on the next one.